Good evening. It's a pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the Sher-Gil Sundaram Arts Foundation, SSAF, to our first program of 2026. My name is Latika Gupta. As I think many of you know, or most of you know, SSAF was founded by Vivan Sundaram and his sister Navina Sundaram in 2016. Since its inception, the foundation has supported artistic and cultural practice that deals with historical memory with a view towards futures built on secular principles and freedom of expression. And it's these principles that form the bedrock of our work that extends across grants that support art practice, research and writing, publications, SSAF Tulika Books, our co-publishing initiative with Tulika Books, and you can see a display of our imprint and also Tulika Books right outside. SSAF organizes workshops, lectures, and symposia with a view towards incubating and supporting discursive, processual, and experimental strategies of practice through what we call the SSAF Lab. I encourage you to visit our website, ssaf.in, to learn more about all of these programs. Since October 2024, a major location for our work is SCAP, the SSAF Kasoli Art Project, at the site of the erstwhile Kasoli Art Center in Himachal Pradesh, where Vivan organized workshops, seminars, residencies from 1976 to 1991 at his family home. Vivan proposed that the locale and setting be reinvented as the SSAF Kasoli Art Project, with renewed infrastructure and a cross-disciplinary program that focuses on process-oriented workshops, performance making and theater, seminars and screenings. In curating and supporting the arts and cultural practice in the plural and expanded forms, in a world made precarious by severe ecological destruction, increasing militarization, hardening fundamentalist positions, and growing inequities, we ask, or try to ask in all our work, what can the arts do? What forms can political aesthetics take, and how might a rhizomatic approach to making and doing build generative collaborations and resilient hospitable spaces for interdisciplinary and progressive forms of cultural and artistic inquiries? The Tushar Joag Memorial Lecture was instituted in the memory of our dear friend, radical artist pedagogue Tushar Joag, who passed away suddenly in 2018. The following year, the first lecture was delivered by Chaitanya Sambrani, who spoke about the political and personal implications of riding Rocinante, Tushar's remarkable 53-day journey in 2010 from the Sardar Sarovar project on the Narmada River to the Three Gorges Dam in China, where he rode a motorcycle from Western India across the Himalayas into Tibet and then into China. Zoe Butt delivered the second lecture, speaking from her location in Vietnam about an ongoing dialogic journey as a curator to collaboratively redefine art, artistic and curatorial labor, and in her words, and I quote her, dancing the fragile tightrope of difference between local and international landscapes of art, anchored in an educational lack of great political poverty in ideologically governed societies. In 2024, curator David Day traced the key meta-narratives of Southeast Asian art since the Cold War, and their recent modulation in large transnational exhibitions asking, and I quote again, if contemporary art now tells a regional story, what new hierarchies or discriminations might it conceal? And where does this leave the artist network that used to be the main incubators of contemporaneity? This year, we're honored to welcome Dito Yuwono and Mira Asriningtyas to deliver the fourth Tushar Joag Memorial Lecture titled Curatorial, Artistic, Institutional, Practice on a Moving Ground. Dito and Mira are the new directors of the Chimeti Institute for Art and Society in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. Dito is an artist and curator who comes to this position from Ruang MES 56, where he has served as a co-director since 2020. Mira, an independent curator and writer, takes on this role between the Netherlands and Indonesia. They worked together for over 12 years as Lir, an art space turned into a nomadic curatorial collective. And Lir's projects are characterized by multidisciplinary collaboration, research-based exhibitions, to foster a continuous transgenerational transmission of knowledge, memory, and history. The talk will be chaired by Chaitanya Sambrani, who has helped steer the Tushar Joag Memorial Lecture from its very inception as a speaker, interlocutor, and friend. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here in person today, but he will be joining us via Zoom from Pune. Chaitanya Sambrani is an art historian and curator specializing in modern and contemporary Asian art. He's the associate professor and convener of higher degrees by research at the School of Art and Design at the Australian National University, Canberra. He's got a long list of very important exhibitions that he's curated, and is currently, in fact, working on a critical account of Tushar Joag's 2010 project, in the context of the politics of belonging and the futures of fresh water in Asia, to be published by SSAF Tolika Books. Over to you, Chaitanya. He'll be on in a minute.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Latika. And thank you, Dito, Mira, and all our friends who are gathered in Delhi this evening. I'm very sorry not to be there with you in person, but there are pressing reasons for this. It is indeed a great pleasure and a great honor to welcome Dito and Mira as our lecturers today. This has been a series, as many of you will have seen, that aims to address one of our enduring blind spots. We are very well informed most of the time towards happenings and events, individuals, histories, personalities, and opportunities to our Northwest, with relatively little engagement to the Southeast. And this is not by any means a peculiarity of the Indian situation. It is, in fact, a peculiarity of many global situations, especially from the global majority, the global South, where we tend to be relatively inattentive to our neighbors while remaining more in tune with discourses from further afield. In some ways, this series tries to address those conversations and to encourage those conversations. It is possible that we in fact have a deep sense of belonging with each other. It lies very close to the surface if we were to investigate it a little bit. Whether we're talking about our histories of trade, histories of faith, of art and architecture, of textiles, languages, and foods. We are inheritors of, one of the world's great examples of cultural commingling that took place from the early centuries of the current era, and that have continued to enrich many parts of our lives. In more recent years, we are familiar with the history of Shantiniketan, the efforts of Rabindranath Tagore, who visited, among other places, Java and Bali in 1927, as a result of which batik entered the curriculum in Shantiniketan. As well, following that, important modernist figures from Indonesia, such as Rusli in the 1930s and Afandi in the 1940s, came to Shantiniketan. Afandi, who commands the same kind of respect in Indonesia that Hussain or his ilk would command over here in India. So there are tremendous resonances that lie just underneath the surface. The history of the Asia-Africa Conference and non-aligned movement in Bandung, starting from the mid-1950s, is another instance of these coeval paths. Indonesia declared independence from Dutch imperialism on the 17th of August, 1945. India on the 15th of August, 1947. It's a strange symmetry between the 5 and the 7. Switch them apart and you have each other's independence dates. We went on to chart quite distinct routes through the history of modernism, but we were united in amongst other things by the fact that our national motto is actually identical. Indonesia's being Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, India's being Vividhata Mein Ekta, which mean exactly the same thing. Indonesia, like India, is a multicultural, multilinguistic, multi-faith nation, an archipelago rather than India's subcontinental presence, but an archipelago of tremendous diversity that is very akin to the kind of diversity that we find over here. It has sometimes been called the improbable nation in the academic literature. Indonesia is known as the improbable nation, whereas India has been called by Aditya Nigam and others the impossible nation. So between the improbability of Indonesia and the impossibility of India, I think there is a tremendous conversation that we are about to participate in. I'm delighted that Dito and Mira have accepted this invitation in spirit of many of the ideals that Tushar would have held dear, which included conversations, affiliations, arguments, engagements, transformation that came out of solidarities. That willfully and willingly and deliberately posed interventions and challenges into the world that addressed over and over the state of uncertainty and flux, which is the subject that Dito and Mira have chosen for their lecture today. Um, they want to speak about instability as a generative framework, which I find tremendously exciting, where they also presume and offer and challenge for us to consider art as part of an active infrastructure, which builds engagement, solidarities, and justice. I'm dearly looking forward to listening to you, Dito and Mira. Please make your presentation. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Latika and SSAF and Chaitanya for the invitation to present our practice for the first time in India at this esteemed forum of the Tushar Joag, I'm sorry for misspelling that probably, memorial lecture. It has been a great honor for us, and coincidentally, tonight's lecture also marked the 15 years of our practice as LIR, and it is a pleasure for us to share it with you all tonight. When we talk about curatorial, artistic, and institutional practice on a moving ground, what does moving ground means? For us, it's translate both metaphorically and literally. Situated at the Ring of Fire, the island of Java, where we are from, is susceptible to earthquakes, tsunami, and volcanic eruptions. It often feels like we are standing on a continuously moving ground. This flux and instability somehow reflects as well in the socio-political situation around us. Operating in Indonesian art world is no different. To begin, it is important to note that in Indonesia, the contemporary art field was largely shaped by informal infrastructures, one that are often non-governmental, and in the beginning, non-institutional. Despite having a relatively young public funding system for the art, which has only recently begun to bloom and likely to be short-lived, subject to streamlining or discontinuation, there has always been a robust and dynamic art scene in every city. The art ecosystem in Indonesia is mostly self-organized, relying little on formal infrastructure or government funding. It is not unusual for art institutions to be artist-run, self-funded, and kept alive through the in-kind support of networks and friends. This artist-led structure is centered on collective autonomous practice that often operates horizontally. With or without funding, our art world possesses a resilience and enduring capacity to stay robust and dynamic.
Yet, precisely within this precariousness and structurelessness, We have found generosity, experimentation, and nurturing. It was through this precarity that many of us learned to build sustainable practice. What might seem to be instability to others can also be something to be embraced as a generative framework, offering actionable approach for how artistic, curatorial, and institutional practice can adapt and reconfigure in response to ongoing change around it. How what seems to be instability might actually open up space for possibility. Let us elaborate with a reflection from our individual paths. In this session, we will be sharing about our experience of coming of age in the precarity of Indonesia's contemporary art ecosystem. Our trajectory spanned from the year 2011 to 2026. From individual practice, initiating an independent art space that grew into the Curatorial collective LIR and recently becoming directors of Jemeti. Throughout this trajectory, we will share about our experience working across roles, as curator, as writer, as artist, organizer, researcher, neighbor, citizen, and collaborator. My practice travels between artistic and curatorial. I often refer to it as wearing multiple hats, as it often confuses people who came from a more structured art ecosystem with fixed singular roles. However, I entered the contemporary art scene through the path of an artist, even without prior art education. I graduated from socio-political studies, and as an artist, my interest lies in how a space is interwoven with politics and history, and my practice often address socio-political historical issues through the production of video, photography, and audiovisual installation. In the past 10 years, I chose residency as a vehicle to further develop my site-specific artistic practice at institutions not only in Indonesia, but throughout Asia, Europe, US, and Australia. I began my curatorial practice through LIR, which we will elaborate later, and become a fellow of Raw Academy Cura in 2019, as well as Independent Curator International or ICI Intensive in 2024. From 2020 to 2024, I was the program director of Ruang Mes 56, a contemporary art and photography collective in Yogyakarta, and curated the first Yogyakarta International Photography Festival, or JOFIS, in 2023.
Whereas for me, curating has always been my main vehicle, and writing is both my tool and entry point. I actually began autodidactly through writing articles for lifestyle magazines about artist studios and exhibition reviews in the early 2010 to 2016. But I finally pursued my first formal curatorial education at the Apple Curatorial program at the Apple Art Center Amsterdam in 2016. Followed by a fellowship at Raw Academy Cura in 2019 and a master degree from Utrecht University. Later in my practice, I focus on the idea of learning from polycentric epistemology rooted in local context as an attempt to decolonize the knowledge system in relation to ecological sustainability and to further investigate the remaining traces of colonialism. I have been curating independently and publishing in journals, artist monograph, and books. My latest books, Institutional Making on a Moving Ground, a case study of 900 MDPL 2017 to 2022, drawing upon the shift of working with and working within the community in making 900 MDPL Biennale in my hometown Kaliurang, was recently published.
Upon entering the art field in 2011, we founded LIR Space to be a collective learning space for art for young artists and non-artists alike. For 8 years, Lear Space, we both learned 4 years at Lear Space, we both learned through institution making, exhibition making, and initiating different alternative education platforms for young artists. We treated the space like our child in the way that we work other jobs to support it financially, but also as a collective learning space for the art. This space became our first site of curatorial education, drawing inspiration from the poetic of everyday life, literature, socio-political debate, and alternative history. It was our long-term training for the not yet. After 8 years, 109 exhibitions, 154 artists, 20 institutional collaboration, 15 educational platforms, and more than 75 public programs, we decided to close the physical space, and in 2019, Lear Space turned nomadic into Lear Curator Collective. Without its brick and mortar space, Lear is a movable institution, continuously adapting to the movement of the ground beneath us. We function both as individual and our collective work as Lear combines our interests in collective counter-history and mapping anomalies in everyday life, grounded in socio-political arguments of equal access and site specificity. By shifting Lear from a permanent exhibition space to a nomadic, research-oriented curatorial collective, we continuously facilitate practical exchange and test alternative collaborative models in our field. Our projects are characterized by multidisciplinary collaboration and often performative exhibition in order to foster the continuous transgenerational transmission of knowledge, memory, and history. We believe that collective memory is also a moving ground in a way that it's always contested. Key projects include the long-running curated by Lear series 2018 to 2023, presenting solo exhibition by artists such as Mela Yarsma, Jompet Kuswidananto, and Heri Dono, among others. Transient Museum of 1,000 Conversations, which is later will be explained by Mira. It's part of the 900 MDPL. Was presented in New York, Taipei, Paris. Also, in 2020 to 2021, we curate Polynesian Tree, titled Of Hunters and Gatherers, together with Kitima Chariprasit from Thailand, which resulting in a multi-sited exhibition, symposium, and journal across Asia. This is the Museum of 1,000 Conversations, which later will bridging to the 900 MDPL. This one from New York series, and then this one from Taiwan series.
And then maybe we go back a little bit to.
And then this is one of the type of the show that we curate in Indonesia. It's a artist solo exhibition of Jompet Kuswidananto, which at the moment he participates in Kochi Biennale. And then this one, it's Heri Dono. It's a quite celebrated artist in Indonesia. Yes.
Yes. And in 2017, we initiated another institution, 900 MDPL. It's a biennial site-specific project in Kaliurang, an aging historical resort village 7 kilometers away from the Mount Merapi caldera, one of Indonesia's most active volcanoes. In this disaster-prone area, we propose a possibility to create a growing socially engaged archive of the village and to preserve the community's collective memory by bringing together artists, local and international artists, for a research residency and production of a new work. The first edition of 900 MDPL in 2017 portrayed the community and the neighborhood through personal stories. The second edition, titled 900 MDPL, Ghosts of a Thousand Conversations, in 2019, attempted to pinpoint the village within the map of Indonesian history. And the third edition in 2023 aims to stimulate and discuss the possibility of exercising folklore and mythology as heritage knowledge of co-living with our non-human counterpart. The 900 MDPL projects consists of an elongated continuum of smaller events, such as the multi-site exhibition, the transient museum, public program, and publication series. All of these are made within this continuum because of this the cycle of the volcano, which is unstable. So we keep on making something that is preservable but also movable at the same time. As we enter the field by building and reshaping the art institution that shelter us, growing together and alongside the artists, and using exhibition making as a form of research, throughout the year, long-term conversation and intimacy become the foreground of our relationship with artists. We walk alongside the artists as they walk under the volcano. We consulted a spiritual advisor as an artist requested for the most haunted site for the exhibition, and we accompanied them throughout midnight production crisis or existential crisis alike. During this time, knowledge is transferred, a chance for collaboration open, and the bond between people within the community strengthened. This mode of knowing and acquiring knowledge independently requires a generous structures, something that we learn from the art ecosystem in Indonesia. This willingness to share thought while giving time and attention to other people's thought that requires trust and attentiveness. In the end, it opens up space for endless possibilities. We learn the different languages of the ground where we are standing, with whom we are speaking, and for what cause. Along the way, we learn how to work at the White Cube's context in the global north that requires a different approach than working alongside the community under an active volcano at the Ring of Fire. To understand the curatorial practice within Indonesian art scene, we can borrow Patrick Flores' idea. In his publication, Past Peripheral, Curation in Southeast Asia 2008, that examines the region's curatorial landscape through the lens of cultural and political transformation and the role of curator as mediator in social engagement. Flores argues that curatorial practice in Southeast Asia has unique challenges as it is often grapples with history of colonialism, post-colonial identity, and rapid modernization, requiring a more nuanced theoretical approach than typically applied in the Western context. In addition to Flores, another curator, our late mentor, Koyo Kuo, argue for a model where a curator is deeply involved in the community and context, fostering a long-term conversation rather than merely organizing exhibition. This approach supports curator acting as facilitator of ongoing dialogue and social interaction, which is particularly relevant in regions like Southeast Asia, where art often interacts with activism and community building. In this region, art institutions are porous and have proximity to society. To us, the long curatorial conversation within the Indonesian art ecosystem was the first and the most important informal art education that we attended. But even before that, there was Cemeti.
Cemeti was pioneering contemporary art institution founded by artists Mela Yasma and Nindityo Adipurnomo in their humble living room in 1988. During the authoritarian New Order regime, this act alone The act of turning a private living room into an exhibition space was already a political gesture. Most public institutions built during the New Order represented the government view of an ideal art activity as an event and in how artists choose to express their ideology through their work. To remain free from censorship and independent of government cultural agenda, contemporary art spaces like Cemeti needed to be self-funded and self-organized. The decision to operate from a living room was an act of resistance, a refusal of the state's control and censorship over art. Since then, Cemeti became space for freedom of expression, and art was understood as inherently social and political. From that modest living room, more than 37 years later, Cemeti has grown into an established institution, the longest-running contemporary art space in Indonesia. It has played an active role in process of internationalization, has inspired the birth of many other art spaces, and continues to serve as a site for informal education. It nurtures the professional development of artists, curators, and art managers alike. Like many art practitioners in our generation, we were, directly and indirectly, shaped by the presence of Cemeti with its rigorous program and exhibition. Earlier in my path as young artist, I learned through closely assisting Cemeti's artists in residence circa 2010s before finally having my solo show in Cemeti in 2017. Mira did her very first alternative curator education through Cemeti's Young Curator Forum in 2013, even before all other formal curatorial education she took. Throughout its 37 years of existence, Cemeti has always offered artists and cultural practitioners a platform to develop, present, and practice their work in close collaboration with curators, researchers, activists, writers, performers, and local communities. The program takes shape through exhibition, workshop, talks, assemblies, publication, long-term research threads, and the annual Artist in Residence program. The spirit of Cemeti as perpetual learning site through its programming and exhibition has been our ground when we were appointed as director of the institution in 2024. We have landed on the new role with a plan and roadmap, but we are fully aware that we did not arrive in a vacuum. The significance and the history of the institution humbled us. After slowly acclimating to all senses of being in Cemeti, we first noticed the porosity, a space designed to create a connection between the building, the people, and the surrounding. The decision not be the uniform and sterile white cube gallery type reflects Cemeti's commitment to society. In reflecting about porosity, perhaps the kind of art space that suits our context is one that does not isolate itself from life. Not a white cube, but a space where the smell of the neighbor's cooking, the sound of motorcycles, the humidity, or the laughter from the street can all enter and coexist with the artwork inside the gallery space. Learning from the porosity of the building of Cemeti, we firmly believe that the socio-political and the society shall never be isolated from the discourse of art and artistic practice. From the architectural features of Cemeti alone, one can learn how the institution is inherently relational, rooted, and designed to be locally significant and internationally relevant. It is about how art and the art institution relate to society. In our tenure, we keep our programming porous to the social political situation around us.
Across these shifting roles and contexts, we identify key characteristics of the Indonesian art scene and its porosity. However, we sometimes ask ourselves, is it really as structureless as it seems to the outside eyes? Perhaps it was in the beginning, especially with the perpetually changing political regime, colonial past, rebellious nature, and the unstable ground. However, today, what may seem as the lack of structure, much like the traffic in Indonesian road, actually operates through a set of shared, unspoken consensus behind the street's dramaturgy based on empathy and mutual respect. It is a form of controlled chaos, grounded in awareness and collective negotiation. To navigate such a field requires spatial sensitivity to context, respect to others' knowledge, and an understanding of the invisible dramaturgy that holds it all together. On top of it, people has always been the most crucial infrastructure in the field. Historically, self-organized art initiatives exemplify the idea that people become infrastructure by bypassing traditional funding models and even traditional structures and rules in art. The field survives not through fixed system but through the mobility, care, and interdependence among practitioners. Practitioners can leverage the flexible boundaries between roles to form hybrid collaborations and collective structures. We recommend leveraging this openness to reimagine art as an active infrastructure for civic engagement, solidarity, and justice. In Indonesia, this interdependence is rooted in the cultural concepts such as gotong royong or mutual cooperation and nongkrong or informal hanging out, where knowledge and support flow organically and sharing common goal and accessible cultural vision often spark voluntarily participation. People come together not for financial gain, but to strengthen the collective and achieve a shared purpose. Within this framework, art is no longer art, but what we can achieve through it. Indonesian ecosystem, because of this, is both fragile and dynamic. Space appears and disappears, yet their life cycle, the birth, the death, the rebirth, fuel the vitality of the scene. When a space ceases to exist, it doesn't necessarily mean failure. Its spirit, its idea, and its people continue to live on within the collective memory. The critical engagement with infrastructure remain. This is how we understand resilience on a practice on a moving ground, not as permanence, but as transformation, perpetual changes, and the urge to remain relevant.
In retrospect, we were one of the practitioners born from the field underneath the grid, free from rules and ungovernable. By reflecting on our work as individual, collective, and within the institutional levels, we propose that practicing on a moving ground means more than just acknowledging precarity. It also represents a methodological orientation. It serves as a method for handling uncertainty, building near solidarities, and staying responsive to changing social, political, and ecological realities. Indonesia's art world might seem fragile, uncertain, and precarious, but it is also alive, generous, and resilient. Its resilience lies not in permanence, but in its capacity to adapt, to reinvent itself, and to sustain through relationship and care. Between the acceleration of life and changing regimes, what remains are the people, their memories, practices, and shared values. This is what we believe to be the foundation of resilient art ecosystem, collective growth, interdependence, and a belief that the most important infrastructure has always been and will always be the people. Thank you.